All right, we are live. Let me get myself situated here. Got a little bit of work to do today. There we go. Go live on my Amazon here. Yeah, so we're gonna get some work done today. So today, what I have to do, and I'll wait for people to come in, but what we're doing today is I'm taking my Raspberry Pi out of here and putting it in here. And the reason we are doing this today is because I've got a project coming up, and it's I'm doing one of my paid tutorials, and the company would probably prefer that the Raspberry Pi not be in a case like this, but rather something that looks more Raspberry Pi-like. So we're going to be, kind of doing a chill Friday afternoon stream. We're going to get the Raspberry Pi installed in here, and we'll see how easy this case is to work with. This is called the Flirc case, Flirc, and you can find it on the link that you see down below in the video description. And we will get, let me get my chat thing going here. So yeah, we're going to have some fun. And I started teaching this week, so I got that going. I don't know if any of my students are going to be watching, but I'm teaching at my university, my alma mater. And Romeric is here, and Cedar Lake is here, and William Wilkinson. Zosu says it's a good case. So I'm looking forward to, yeah, it looks like people seem to like this one. Like, this is one of the better cases. It's very, very highly reviewed on Amazon. So we'll take a look at it, and we're going to take my Pi out of this thing, which I think this was a lot of fun. So we looked at this about 2 weeks ago, I think, and this turns your Raspberry Pi into a little PlayStation with a screen, and it's not perfect, but it was fun. But I think I'm going to, I bought this one, so I actually bought both of these things. I bought the case, both cases, but I think I'm going to put this up on my little store to get it out of here, because I'm going to put it back eventually. I need to buy an extra Raspberry Pi, but I'm going to put it back in this one when I'm done with this project. This I think is the best Raspberry Pi gaming case ever, because it has a cooling fan. You get the little cartridge that has the hard drive on it. So this is like the ultimate. I mean, it's just the ultimate Raspberry Pi case. So I'm probably going to go back to that one. If you have a Raspberry Pi 3, this is my favorite for the 3. This is the little Sega Genesis one. That one's really cool, too. These are from a company called Retro Flag. They just do some awesome stuff. And it's functional. Like, you hit the power button, it turns on. There's like a little script that runs. It's really neat. Adam Louse is here. Gary likes the Argon case. David Langley is here. I Am on Tech is watching on your coffee break. I happen to be on my coffee break, too. And Hallie wants to know, what is the Pi 4 for? Only for retro gaming? No, actually, the Pi 4 is, honestly, like, I think it's the best. If you are looking to learn how Linux works and Unix operating systems, the Pi is the best thing you can get for that, because it's actually really good for coding. And the one I like a lot is, this is another Raspberry Pi. I don't have it on my list of things. Maybe I should add it to let me add it to the list of things that we're talking about on Amazon. This is the Pi 400. You can actually get this right now. I'm looking on Amazon. Yeah, the kit. So if you're looking for a Raspberry Pi 4, this is, like, I think the best way to get one right now, because the regular 4s are out of stock. But this one is really neat. So this is a Raspberry Pi 4 built into a keyboard. And what's cool about this is that for $100, you get a book, you get a mouse, a power supply, like everything you need. And this reminds me a lot of the old Commodore computers from the 80s, because it plugs into your television. So there's 2 HDMI ports here. You just plug it into your TV, and you got a computer with a keyboard. It's awesome, and it comes with a mouse in kit form. And they give you a book with it. I don't know if I have the book close by here. But they have a book with it that takes you from knowing nothing about coding to learning about Python and then connecting electronics that you can build yourself to the GPIO pins. So it's a really great entry point. You know, if you ask what is a Pi 4 for, I think it's a great entry point into computing in general. And because, you know, with the exception of Windows, you know, most operating systems now are Unix based. It's a great way to learn. And so I am a big fan of these devices. And today we're going to move my other Pi, the circuit board one, into a new case here. Darren Buss is here. Hello there. And Optimus Prime loves his Raspberry Pi. It's good to see you live too. Cedar Lake says that Raspberry Pi has gotten me into too many projects. Docker, Plex, Nginx. Yes, I mean it can be a server. You know, and I had, you know, with the original Pi, what I was doing is I connected my original Pi, like the original one from like 8, 9, 10 years ago. I connected it to an Apple IIe, and I had it be a interface between the IIe and the internet, so people could dial in. I was running a BBS on the Apple IIe, and the Raspberry Pi was a conduit to that. So they have like this little server applet called, TCP-Sir, which basically converts a telnet connection to serial. So all sorts of stuff you can do. It is a rabbit hole. David says, I'm sounding better. Yes, you know, it's funny. This cold has lingered longer than the COVID lingered for me. So I was better from the COVID for like a week and a half, and then I caught a cold. And I've been like just mildly congested for the last like 2 weeks. But I'm getting there. Hopefully I'll be better soon, completely better. I think we had another vote here for the Argon case. Yeah, so Gary liked the Argon case, and Retro Gaming Bygones, the Argon one and the Geek Pi Desk Pi, because they feature because they have the full HDMI breakouts, definitely. Here's a good question from Darren Buss. Can some of these Raspberry Pis stream? You know, they do have video encoders on them now, but they're not very good for streaming. I'd like to hear from some people on that one. And Carol is here. Yes, the cold bit. I got it all. I got the cold. I got the corona. So yeah, and I'm feeling better. I don't sound 100%, but I feel fine. It's just the very minor lingering congestion from the cold and not from the COVID. The good news is the cold finally cleared out my COVID for my testing. So it took me about, I think, 3.5 weeks to stop testing positive, believe it or not. So there you go. William is re-ripping his Blu-ray collection of Plex. That's going to take a while. Very time-consuming to do that. All right, so I'm going to go, first of all, we're going to take this apart and get my Raspberry Pi extracted from the existing case here. And so what I'm going to do is just unscrew the back here, and then we'll get the rest of it out. And speaking of HDMI breakout connectors, this has a HDMI breakout connector on it, so you don't have to have the mini. That's my one gripe with the Raspberry Pis over the years. I think the original had a full-size HDMI built into the little board, but then they went to micro HDMI, and now they're in or mini HDMI, then they went to micro. So it's really a pain because you have to make sure you have the right cables to get your HDMI interfaced. But I'll tell you what, you know, we looked at that Lenovo tablet over the weekend, last weekend. That tablet is faster for web browsing than the Pi 4 is. And of course, you get a screen built into it. So that's something to think about. And I am using this Oriya screwdriver set that I bought a while ago. This is like on one of those Amazon Prime Day deals. And it's worked out pretty well so far. It's a nice, they give you like spudgers and every screwdriver that you might need for working on a computer is in here, including all those weird Torx ones. So I remember back in the early 90s, I had a PowerBook, and I got a modem for the PowerBook, and I had to take it apart to install the modem, and Apple used these Torx screws. I had to go find a Torx screwdriver to get into it. And Chris Allegretta is here. Hello, Chris. Yeah, no, they never got back to me. You know what? I liken it to like they are kind of like the cool kids table. They don't respond to anybody. Because I'd actually reached out to one of their members, not even about Nebula, but on a potential collaborative project that I thought might have been fun, a real quick one, and never even got back to me. I mean, it's one thing to like say, hey, I can't, I'm too busy, but like to not even respond, you know, like it's just, I think there's a bit of a cool kids table to that group, which is fine. I've been thrown out of better. Oops. But Floatplane has worked out really well for me. I mean, I'm not making a lot of money on it, but it's just nice to have another place. And what was also nice was that Floatplane reached out to me. And I didn't go on there right away just because I didn't have the bandwidth, but now I do. So I put stuff up on Floatplane. And I'm going to do, I think actually my next wrap-up video is going to talk about that a little bit. So Brian says he's tried to get somebody at Flirc to answer a question and says the customer service isn't that great. So hopefully I don't have a problem with my case. So now I have to remember how to extract my Raspberry Pi from this case here. And I think all I have to do is just get these screws out and then we're extracted. So I'm just going to save these screws because I am going to put the case back together without my Pi installed. And I think I'm missing a screw here. I only have 3. So I'll have to let whoever buys this know that. Okay. And we'll just undo this. Now what I also have to do for the new case, oh, it only does have 3. Oh, there's 4, yeah. No, actually, there was only 3 on this because the case, one of these 3 screws goes down over the other one, right? So that one goes down over it. So I'm just going to put these screws back in on the other 3. One thing on, I forgot what I was going to say. See, I'm losing my train of thought here. Just going to put this in here. So Brian, were you trying to get like a pre-sales, you know, like a pre-sales question for them, or was it a problem with the case that you had? So, oh, Carol's wondering what I'm going to do with the case here. Oh, Amda Brown. I'm going to say hello to a few more people here. Amda Brown is here. Yeah, I haven't seen you in a while, Amda Brown. Yeah, I haven't been streaming all that much this month. And I think the times that I did, I was on a different time. But I'm going to try to do a little bit more. And we're getting a blizzard here tomorrow. So I think we're looking at getting like, I think we're getting over a foot of snow. So maybe if the kids are occupied, I will come down. So I got another one of those retro magazines. So I thought that might be kind of fun. The other thing I wanted to get going is I got one of those, I bought this a while ago. I got the new RetroTink 5X, that scaler. I've been meaning to play around with that, so we'll get into that in a little bit. So this is the Raspberry Pi 4. Now what I also have to do is I got to take this heatsink off the chip. That's what I was going to talk about, because the Flirc case has like a built-in heatsink on it. So we have to get that heatsink off. But before I do that, I've got to get my, I just dropped one of these screws, great. I got to put this other case back together again. I just dropped the screw. Where did it go? Great. So I think the screw actually fell into the corner of my chair here. We'll put it back together, what I have here, and then we'll track it down. Darren wants to know, can it do Steam games? Well, I think you can stream Steam games, but you can't play Steam games on this because the Raspberry Pi is not an Intel-based computer. But it does do video pretty well, and by extension, that means it'll do game streaming fairly well. So I think it could work well for that. Let's see, I got a few more questions here. So Jamie says, I'm going to love that Flirc case. That's what I've got my Pi 4 in, does a better job of spreading heat than with just the thermal pad. So that is good. Yeah, so my NES style retro flag case has a fan built into it along with the heatsink. So this Raspberry Pi has been through a lot because it keeps getting different coolers stuck on it. But yeah, we're going to go and pull off that heatsink. And that thermal pad is on there from the last case that it was in before this one. So I will get that going. And what we're going to do, actually, so this is the project that I'm working on. So I don't know if you all heard of Channels, the DVR app. So they actually have a Raspberry Pi server for the Channels DVR. And they're going to have me make a tutorial video about how to get it installed, which is going to be a fun project because I haven't really played with Channels in a while. So it's going to be good just to play with it. But also, let's see if I can find that screw that I dropped. But what's also going to be fun is just seeing how it runs on the Raspberry Pi. And what theirs does is it runs, this is what's kind of cool about their thing, is that it will run from an external hard drive. So you actually boot it off of the USB versus the SD card. So I thought that was kind of neat too. So it'll be a fun little project to play around with. And just bear with me, folks, I'm just trying to find that screw before I move on here and forget about it. Well, it'll turn up. Okay. So we'll put that aside for now. And now we're going to take the heatsink off of this Raspberry Pi. Hopefully, see, this is the problem, is they get really stuck on there because it's like permanent adhesive. So I think if I twist it here, it'll come off. There it goes. Okay, so that's off. And I'm going to put it back in my... I bought these heat sinks for the Mister back in the day, but my Mister actually had a heat sink that it came with as part of one of its accessories that I bought. And Nigel is here from London Heathrow. And yeah, we're going to probably do one of those retro. I got another magazine in, so we can definitely do another one of those. They don't get a lot of views, but they're fun to do. And maybe I'll just do one at a different time and see if the timing works better. And Charles Broyles, thank you very much for the follow on Amazon. And Jim K logged into Amazon also. All right, so let's take a look at the case here. And we'll see what's inside. So that's the front, or the back, and that's the side. And inside, I'm just trying to see how it's configured here. So inside, it looks like just a block of metal here. It looks like the Raspberry Pi will mount on the lower portion. And then what they've done here is this part comes into contact with the processor. So it kind of diffuses the heat through the entire case. I think this is aluminum. So it looks like die-cast aluminum, so it's got the little dies there. So theoretically, it'll transfer heat to the entire outer case here. And it looks like, yeah, so this just like snaps into the top part kind of snaps in, but I don't think, I bet you this is how it goes in. Let's take a look. So it looks like this kind of goes in like so. So the only issue, oh, I see. So, well, no. So you lose access to your GPIO pins in this case. So this would not be ideal if you were kind of a maker, right? Because the GPIOs are totally blocked. And I got to put that thermal pad in. I think it's for the Pi 4. Should be for the Pi. Yeah, it's a Pi 4 case. But for some reason, maybe it's this pad that I have on here now. Let's peel that one off. I got to put that pad on before. Yeah, so that was what it is. Okay. So I think it lines up. Or maybe it has to go in kind of like this. Yeah, there we go. And this plastic piece goes down on top. And I'm guessing you screw it through that and you're in. Yeah, so the only issue here is that your GPIO pins are completely blocked. And I don't see any instructions, unless I missed it when I was opening it. So it's apparently pretty self-explanatory. I don't know what they mean by saying all inputs and outputs remain accessible when you have no access to your GPIO pins. So that's a big I/O on there, right? Because this is metal here, so you can't get at the rest of it. And here's another vote for the argon cases. I have Flirc cases for my Raspberry Pi 3s. It works great. Decided to go with the argon case for my Pi 4. Now, the Brown says it's going to be in the 40s tomorrow in Florida. Yikes. Well, you know, actually today is a solemn anniversary because today is the anniversary of the Challenger disaster. And that was caused by a frost in Florida that hardened the O-rings on the rocket boosters. So it's not unusual to get cold weather this time of year down there. But yeah, we're going to have about, the snow numbers keep increasing for us. So we are, yeah, Matt Dremel says Dremel time to get those GPIO pins accessible. We are going to be looking at probably over a foot of snow, close to 2 feet. So we'll have to see what happens there. Now, Carol's wondering if I ever do Dance Dance Revolution DDR. I have never tried it. It looks fun. Actually, it looks like a good workout, but I have never tried that before. All right, so we're going to put this thermal pad on the processor, and that transfers heat to the case here. And you know what I'm going to do? Because I'm going to do a video after the fact. I'm just going to record a quick little bit of B-roll here. So we're going to get the, yeah, because there is no way you can get at your GPIO pins unless I am completely missing something here. Yeah, and there's no airflow on this case at all. All right, so now we're going to position the Pi here. I think we'll do it from this angle. Yeah, it's really not much to this, everybody. It's just kind of just put it together, screw it together, and it's done. Yeah, so I think, you know, it's good if you are not using, if you're using this as a general purpose computing device, probably fine. I got Mark Smith and Matt here saying the Dremel is the way to go. Although I would imagine there's probably cases that would perhaps incorporate the GPIO pins as well, right? So let me look at that argon case. It seems like a lot of people like that case. there's some crazy ones. Oh, I see. It looks like a big, it's called the Argon 1. It's got like a fan. It's got the HDMI breakout. Yeah, this looks pretty cool. And then you've got the removable top, so you get access to the GPIO pins as well. Yeah, that looks pretty slick. I could see why people like that. It's only 25 bucks. I should have got that one. Wow, that's cool. It makes it into like a little mini PC. The Argon 1. Do a search for it. That looks neat. But we're going to go with this one. This one's $10 less, but you get less functionality with it. So that's I mean, am I wrong on this GPIO thing? I don't think I am. There's no way to get at them. They are completely enveloped in there. It's got an IR port also. How about that? Very neat. And Emergency's using it for RetroPie. Yeah, I think it works great for that. And NC Stress, it looks like there's a, yeah, I guess there is room here. So I guess it's like a breakout cable, but I don't see, it didn't come with a cable in the box to do that. Unless I'm missing something. Let me go look up on the page here. Oh, I see. So Jamie, oh, I see. So what you would do then, see, that's got to be kind of cumbersome though, don't you think? Because it's, unless you're soldering it to the bottom of the device here, you can have like wires that you have to get secured, put the case back together, as opposed to just getting at them directly. I just want to look that up real quick and see exactly what their recommendation is on that. And Fierce545 is in the chat on Amazon. Hello there. So it says GPIO and all the main connectors are easily accessible through the bottom. Yeah, so you'd have to connect it and kind of feed it through. But I think if you were doing a lot of things where you're, constantly adding to or removing the GPIO section, you probably would want something a little more accessible. What do you all think? And Retro Game says you could use a flat ribbon cable with the GPIO. Yeah, I guess you could have some kind of breakout cable. And Master Billy says it's really ideal for media servers. And that's why, yeah, so this is, and what we're going to be doing with this is a media serving project where we're going to show how the channel's DVR works on a Raspberry Pi. And MG First says the Raspberry Pis are super out of stock. They are. But you know what's in stock? And this is exactly the same thing. You can get this right now, the kit with a power supply, a mouse, and a book for $100. And this is exactly the same thing. This is a Raspberry Pi 4 in a keyboard case. I think they actually clocked this one faster, if I'm not mistaken. That was the Pi 400. You can find it on my Amazon link. I think, let me see what the, let me take a look and see what the, just trying to see what the machine has inside of it. Yeah, it's built on the Pi 4, same processor. It's got its own heatsink built in. You have accessible GPIO pins. You get the book, a power supply, and a mouse. I think it comes with the SD card already configured as well. And those you can get. I mean, they're on Amazon right now. And I think people look at those, they want something smaller and more compact. But, if I don't know how much RAM it has. That's the one thing. Let me take a look. 4 gigs. Okay, so this is actually a pretty good deal. So this is the 4 gig Raspberry Pi 4 that's integrated into its own case. And the GPIO pins are accessible right here. So you can plug stuff right into it. And the book that it comes with is great. Like it gives you, like it's, all sorts of cool coding ideas. You start with like Scratch and work your way to Python. They even show you how to make basic electronics that you can connect to it. So if you're looking for a Raspberry Pi, this is a good deal, I think, because of what you get with it. And it just gives me the old Commodore vibe, because you've got a computer that plugs into your television that's just ready to go. It's really neat. Oops, almost lost another screw. All right, so let's put the rest of this thing back together here. And we got a few minutes to kill, so I could maybe install the Raspbian OS on it. It's actually really easy to do. Down there, and then we'll just screw down the other end here. And actually, you know what? I could probably just boot right up. Let's do that, because a lot of you haven't seen what you can do with a Raspberry Pi. So you know what I'm going to do first. Let's see if this is going to work. I think it will. I'm going to grab the SD card out of this, because I already have set up the OS. This is a 16 gig card. All we're going to do here is just put it in here. It's a little bit of a tight fit. I'm going to get it going the right way here. And it goes in the other way. It's a little hard to get at that SD card slot there, but so that's in. And let me see if I have a long enough cable. So I'm going to run it through my we'll run it through my NDI thing here. And these Raspberry Pis also have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth built in. But what I'm going to use is my favorite keyboard here. This is my, whatchamacallit, my Lenovo TrackPoint keyboard. And what's neat about this is that it is, for all intents and purposes, a ThinkBook or ThinkPad, a ThinkPad without the ThinkPad. You just have the keyboard part. All right, so get that going. And I'm pretty sure that it will boot from this because the Pi 400 is a Pi. And if it doesn't, we'll just redo the operating system. And that's one of the great things about the Raspberry Pi. You can just continually reformat it if you screw it up. And it's really hard to break it. I mean, you can, but if you do, you just cycle the OS on it again and you're good as new. All right, got a cable here. I'm just going to run this thing. Table here. So my only gripe with the Raspberry Pis, I'll get to some of your comments in a minute, is that it uses these micro HDMI connectors, so they're a little less ideal. You've got to buy the right cable to go with it. All right, so we got that going. And that is connected to my video system. I'm going to switch this on. And we're also going to add it to my list of video sources. And I'm also going to take my keyboard's dongle here. And you have a couple of choices for USB ports. Let me just add this video source to the mix here real quick. Now you have a choice of USB ports on this, but my preference is to use the slower ports. So these two are USB 2 ports, these two are USB 3. So we're going to plug this into the USB 2 port. You don't have to use Ethernet, but because I have a connection, may as well use the wired connection, a little bit quicker. And now we're going to connect power. And it should boot right up. And the Creative Lady, thank you for the follow on Amazon. All right, so now we have plugged it in. And hopefully we don't let the magic smoke out here. And it should boot up. Not seeing any lights on it though. So let's see what's going on here. This could be an issue with my power supply. Let's see if we get anything out of it real quick here. I found these things can be a little finicky on the power supplies, like the USB-C cables, all that kind of stuff. And it does not like Apple power supplies. Let me try a different power cable, because some power cables are problematic also. Like the Apple power cables, it doesn't like those. So let's try, this is an Apple one, but it's on a non-Apple power supply, so let's see if this one does the trick. Because I have one of the originals, so that could be driving part of the problem here. There it goes, I think. Yep, now we're going. Okay. Yeah, now one of the things that I like about, and this is a good point to bring up here, one of the things I like about these retro flag cases is that they integrate a power button that works. There's a script that you install, and once that script is installed, it will allow you to shut down properly, which is really neat. And this is actually kind of like a bare bones installation of the Raspbian OS. Let me turn my keyboard on here. So let's give this a second to come up here. Let's see what's going on. That's on. I think I have it in Bluetooth mode. There we go. All right, now we're good. That should, there we go. So now my mouse is working. And it's kind of nice to like navigate with the tracking nub here. Timothy wants to know, can you overclock the Pi 4 without heating problems? Yeah, I'm pretty sure this case will give you some of that flexibility. There's no active fan on it, so I think if you're really planning on pushing it, you may want to get a case that integrates a fan versus just a big heatsink. It does basically spread the heat out to the entire aluminum portion of the case. And we'll give it a password real quick here. I'm going to skip this because we have our network already put together. And now what it's going to do is look for some updates. I don't think there will be any because I just installed this the other day. But you can see how easy they've made it. Yeah, and there's never really been a switch on these either. It's just, you just kind of plug it in, and then you want to shut it down properly before you turn it off. And Felix has a good comment here. Thermal passive cases are great, but it has quite a bit of trade-offs. Does wish the native, yeah, because there is a PoE adapter you can get for it, but it's not built in built into the hardware that you can use out of the box. David Parker likes to use his Raspberry Pi for testing products at work. They're great for data logging and probe sensing. Yeah, they're so versatile because it's a full computer that you can actually get a lot of memory on them too. I think they sell them, what, up to 4 or 8 gigabytes? I think the one I have is a 2 gig model. Ryan Plumley uses VNC or SSH with his headless Pis. Very easy, and iPads work as a display. Well, that's neat. Yeah, if you use VNC, absolutely. And one of the things that we're going to be doing in this project that I'm putting this together for is setting up a headless media server for the channel's DVR. And it actually supports transcoding, hardware transcoding, but you can only get like one thing at a time transcoding on it. Does it have Wi-Fi? Yes. It has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, along with Ethernet built right in. And DL uses this as a Pi-hole and a media server with this case. I think this is a good use case for this case as a, as a server, media server. It is nice. It's very protective. I would love to see like these kinds of cases get developed for the MR project. And Greg points out that we can, yeah, there must be like a ribbon cable we could run to get at those GPIO. I would say, though, this is probably not an ideal case for people that are going to be accessing GPIO frequently, unless you get a breakout cable. And NC Strev uses the Pi 400 for interfacing equipment at some of their customer locations. Yeah, I would say right now, I have the little Pi because that was out first, but this is really, first of all, you can get these right now, and I don't think the price is inflated. This is $99 for the kit, and I think Amazon has just the regular standalone units too. But you get, kind of everything. You get the case, you get the keyboard built in. I don't know, I just feel like this is a good deal, especially with the book that it comes with. I thought the book was really nice that it ships with. And you can overclock the Pi 400, according to Brian here. And 8 gig is the maximum Pi right now. And they got rid of the 1 gig version. Now, my first Pi, I think, had 256 megabytes of RAM, and then they went up to 512. MG wants to know, how well does the Wi-Fi work with the aluminum case? That is a good question. I should check. Let's see. It looks, my signals are strong here, but I'm down in my basement where I have an access point right next door, so maybe I'll play around with it a little bit and see. But I'm picking up like my secondary networks here pretty well. So I think it'll be okay. And Master Billy says it's a good Docker container server too. I got to play around with Docker on the Raspberry Pi. And I'm surprised there's actually some updates here that it's installing, so we'll let that finish up here real quick. But you can see what the OS looks like. It's neat. And you know what I like about it is that, they're really, so this is produced by a nonprofit foundation, and they're trying to, in Great Britain and across the world, really, for that matter, is to try to really encourage people to learn coding and learn the basics of computing. And so you'll see the first thing on a default installation of Raspbian, which is their OS, is a bunch of IDEs to learn how to program. So you got Java, you have Scratch and Scratch 3, so this is for the kids, and actually for adults too, because you learn the basics of basic program loops. You can get pretty complicated on Scratch too. And you kind of work your way up from there. They've got some IDEs for Python. There's a bunch of education stuff on here, one at the moment. Full Office suite. They have LibreOffice, so you can load up their version of Word here. It's running a little bit slow because it is running updates right now, but you have a Chromium web browser, which is the open source version of Chrome. A VNC server, so that's what what Ryan is using for connecting to it headless. So what you can do is just plug it into the network, no monitor, and just VNC in. This is a viewer, by the way, so this would be what I would use to connect out, but there's probably a server for it, I'm sure, you can install. Basic image viewer, you got a couple basic games. And then, of course, all the retro gaming stuff. You get RetroPie. This thing can run, if I'm not mistaken, I think you can get decent Nintendo 64 emulation out of this. So we have the word processor. Right now I've got my screen scaling up a little bit, so let's adjust that a little bit here just to give it more room. And this will work with a 4K. It'll actually output 4K out of dual displays. We did a little bit on that in my review of the Pi 4 a while ago now. Let's see, let me go into the settings. Oh, it's only at 720, that's why. Okay, let's go to 1080 and apply that. This will probably force a screen layout. Reboot. So I got to reboot to do this, huh? All right, so we'll reboot in a second here. You're only at 720p. I want to move it up to 1080, so let's get that done after the updates. Oh, good. System's up to date. And we're going to do a quick reboot and bring it up at 1080p when it reboots. The thing that I plug it into often defaults to 720p, which is why it's doing that. And Matt brings up a good point here, Matthew, about other operating systems. So Casa OS is designed to work with Docker. All right, I'm going to play with that. Yeah, I've been very much enjoying Docker on my Synology NAS, and I'm looking to learn more about it because I do have a couple of containers installed on my Synology. Oh, this is kind of neat. Casa OS, your home cloud OS, community-based open source software focused on delivering simple home cloud experiences around the Docker ecosystem. Ooh, wow. Here's my weekend Blizzard project, everybody. And it runs on a Raspberry Pi. Well, this is cool. All right, I gotta dig into this one this weekend. And it runs on Intel-based stuff too. Here, I'll pull it up on the screen here so you can all see it. And then you can see how the web browser runs. Not very fast. So that Lenovo tablet that we reviewed last weekend is faster than this. But we'll do a quick, so it's, I never even heard of Casa OS before. It looks beautiful. So it's casaos.io. I'll show you what it looks like here. This will give you a feel for the relative speed of this. Now, I've not overclocked this, so it's a little sluggish, but looks pretty cool. You see like a nice little dashboard here. Look at that. And then you're loading up apps essentially as Docker containers, is what I'm guessing here. Install, run, and manage your Docker applications. And I think that's one of the key things that has been challenging for a lot of people on Docker is that there's a little bit of nuance to getting them running and then upgrading them. So even on Synology, which has a pretty nice interface for it, if I have to update my Docker container, there's a process. It's not like upgrade, right? Like we're used to our apps updating. On Docker, you gotta make sure your settings are preserved, remove the current image, load on the one on top of it. But once you figure it out, it makes a lot of sense. And I really like the architecture of it. So David Bound uses Pies at his company to give new engineers Linux and Python training before starting to use it on embedded aviation systems. Wow, that's some hardcore stuff right there. Helps them get familiar with the OS and the basics before using the real hardware. And that's one of the things that I've often said to people is that I don't want to call it training wheels because it is a full-blown computer with a lot of capacity and power. But in some ways, it is a great way to get familiar with Unix operating systems in a way that is non-destructive. Matthew says, this OS is made for working with Docker. I'm going to have to play around with this. I'd never even heard of this before. So I am definitely playing with that. Andy is here. Sorry if I missed it, but are you planning on using your Pi for anything in particular? Yeah, so I do a lot of little projects here and there. What we're going to be doing with this one is I have the folks from Channels reached out to me. They make a DVR product. That's my cable is bad on this, I think. They make a DVR product, and it connects up with the HD Home Run, which we've covered many times in the past. And their server, their DVR server, will run on a Raspberry Pi. And they wanted me to do a tutorial about getting it working. And I figured they would want it and this is the case that they recommend to their customers right now because it's easy to put together. It's good for a media serving kind of device. And I figured they probably did not want their server demoed on this little PlayStation case, which is awesome, but I don't think, it's a little bit of a distraction. So I wanted to get this case in, which is their recommended case, and see how it works. William's wondering, what editing program do I use? I use Final Cut Pro, But what I would look at if you're on Windows is, and I just recommended this to my students in my college class, DaVinci Resolve, D-A, like Leonardo da Vinci. It's made by Blackmagic Design. It is free for the basic version. If you want to get into the crazy color grading and stuff, that's their pro version. That's like $300, but free. Free, 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 free. Super powerful editor, runs on Mac and Windows. So check it out. I think it's a great editing app, and I've recommended that to my students, and I have to learn how to use it now so I can help them as they're editing with it. R. Delacroix wants to see a custom Pi 400 case with a built-in M-SATA slot. Yeah, it's hard to go back, right, after you've got that. And I have, I don't know if you were tuned in earlier, but I love this case because it has an M-SATA built into a cartridge. Isn't this the coolest thing ever? So this is like a little mini, this is called the Retro Flag Pi 4 case, or NES Pi 4. And I mean, it's just awesome. It has a fan too, so you can overclock. And your SATA hard drive goes inside the little cartridge here. And you can buy extra cartridges, and it just plugs right in like old school Nintendo. It's awesome. So that's a great feature. So Optimus, I do not have a monitor that I can easily set up at the moment, but if you go and look on my channel, I did demo this in detail on how to use dual displays. So let me look and see if I can find the video here. This I did right when it came out. So this was back in 2019, before the world went nuts. If you do a search for my Raspberry Pi 4 review, you will get the lowdown on dual displays in that review. So check it out. I think that'll be really helpful. Let's see what else we got here. And the picture behind me is not Challenger. That is Endeavor. Yeah, that's Endeavor. So we were at, in that picture actually, I did not take that picture, but I was there. My friend Matt took the picture, I think with my camera actually. And that is Endeavor before its last flight. So we did, I went to the last 3 space shuttle launches. Right around the time I was starting the channel, I was doing some reporting for a local news outlet, and I got press passes for the last couple of shuttle missions. And I've put in for the SLS launch, which might be coming up, so that'll be fun. And Matt Kelly, sorry if I missed anything. Yeah, no, we're just poking around here, just kind of showing off what this thing can do. Speaking of NASA, let's take a look at the NASA.gov homepage and see how fast that loads up on here. And yes, today is the anniversary of Challenger. I was a 4th grader, and so I was about 10 years old, just a little bit older than my daughter is now. And I remember that day very, very well. We weren't watching it live, but a lot of kids were, because Krista McAuliffe was the first teacher in space, or was going to be. And so there was a lot of connection with schools on that. So a lot of kids did watch it live, including many kids in my school. My grade just didn't watch it. We didn't have a TV in the classroom. And Brian points out that if you want an M.2 SATA, the Argon case offers that. Very cool. Cartier Vision is here. Hello there. Travis Rhodes is here. And Chris Allegretto was one that saw it live. Yeah, it was pretty awful. And what I remembered of it, so I was at lunch. I remember, you remember where you were? So I was at lunch, and some kid on one of the lunch tables over was joking about the space shuttle exploding, and we were all like, he was making jokes about it already. And you know how kids are. And so my friends were like, that didn't happen, that's not true, that's not true. And one of the teachers came over and said, yes, it is true. And then we went back to the classroom, and I had a great 4th grade teacher. And he's actually a friend of mine in town now. I see him all the time. He's on my Facebook. So the class across the hall had a TV in it. So they were, I think around this time, the cable company, it wasn't Comcast, but the company that got bought by Comcast eventually, gave each school a TV with a connection to it. So we went across the hall to watch it on TV, and they just replayed it over and over and over again. But that was one of those things where, you feel like you're invincible as a nation, and there was a lot of, it made us all feel very vulnerable. I remember that feeling of being vulnerable, that, wow, this invincibility is not so true. And it was sad because, it took a long time to get back going again. And also don't forget that there was another tragedy just a few years ago, 2003, of Columbia, which I think was on February 1st. And, all of the major, the loss of life accidents in spacecraft all happened within the same week, different years. So this is the time of the year that NASA acknowledges that, because all of these accidents happened very close to each other in the calendar. Tech Time with Eric is here. Hello there. Yeah, we're just winding down. We just got this thing going here. And William Wilkinson, yes, DaVinci Resolve 17. And get the free version and play around with it. There's a lot of good videos on YouTube for it, so definitely check it out. Charles G is here. John Helmers is here. Mark was eating lunch at the NAWC in Warminster, Pennsylvania. It was on TV. I remember being up really late. And actually, what was interesting? I was watching, so the kid that played Ralphie in The Christmas Story, he was like the head of some kid space thing. And I remember watching him on Larry King that night on CNN, in the early days of CNN, back when they actually did news. Oh, geez. Optimus Prime saw it live, too. I have a story. I was showing someone the launch, and I touched the screen, and it happened right when he touched the screen. Ugh. Awful. Yeah, the Apollo fire was another one. And it's interesting, you look at each one of these accidents, there was lessons learned that have been carried forward. So in the case of the Apollo fire, it was the mixture of gases in the capsule. So I think when they were working on Apollo initially, and I think going all the way back through Gemini and the other missions, I think it was 100% oxygen that they were pumping into the cabin. And they switched it to a more Earth-like mixture of nitrogen and oxygen to make the atmosphere, or make it less flammable. So I think that was something learned from that, along with a number of other things. The shuttle was, very heavily re-engineered after that accident, including all the rocket boosters and everything. But there were so many, the shuttle was so complex with so many failure points. And you think about the risks that they didn't know about as they were flying this thing for most of its time. And it became very clear that its biggest flaw was the fact that it was downrange from frozen bits of foam that could poke holes in its wings and damage its heat shield. That was really the biggest issue with it, beyond its cost to operate. It was supposed to be this airplane-like thing. It never turned into that. But I think SpaceX is getting close. If they can get that Starship thing to work as they say it will be what they were hoping the shuttle would be, which is something quickly and easily reused. But we shall see. The Falcon 9s are reusable not very quickly. I think they can turn them around in about a month now. But we'll have to see where that goes. Travis Rhodes uses DaVinci Resolve. Yeah, it's great. It's a great piece of software, and the fact that they give it away for free with most of its functionality, I think, is really good. And there's a lot of stories, too, about the fact that there were engineers trying to get somebody to pay attention to some of these issues. And there was a great documentary, I think it's on Netflix. It's not a documentary, it's a dramatization. But I think they did, really dive into how many people were aware of what was going to happen that day because of the cold weather and how those O-rings were reacting. I have not seen this, but I'll add it to my playlist. That looks interesting. And Adviz in Oxford, UK, it's bloody freezing. Well, I'll tell you what, we're about to get 2 feet of snow. Maybe we'll do a little live stream tomorrow as the snow's coming down, and I'll stick one of my cameras out the window. We're going to be getting, at the moment, let's see where they left off, because it's been going, initially it was going to be, maybe 6 inches of snow, and now we're looking at like 1 foot minimum. at least a foot, if not more. Let me see what my buddy, the meteorologist, is saying right now. So he says, ooh, so I am like right on the border of the blizzard warning. So we are in the winter storm warning, but not the blizzard warning. And let's see what the snowfall amounts are looking like here. Jay Slow wants to know where. I'm in Connecticut. Yeah, so I'm like right on the borderline between a blizzard. Actually, I can pull it up on here. Let's take a look here. So let's go to, so I'll pull up NBCConnecticut.com on my Raspberry Pi. You know, it's pretty quick, right? I mean, it's functional. I think they install, yeah, so by default, they put the ad blocker, uBlock Origin, on the browser, which actually makes a lot of sense because the ad code really impacts things. So what they're saying now, 12 to 20 inches of snow in my section of the state. So I'm like around here. And then into Boston, they're looking at like 20 to 30 inches. So yeah, I'm a little bit closer to Rhode Island, Jay Slow. So yeah, we're going to be getting pretty good whack of weather here. But you know, it's the weekend, so it's not like it's going to be a terrible inconvenience, right? So I'm just looking to see if we can see some other stuff here. But yeah, you can see it's pretty quick. You know, it works. I can visit another one of my Connecticut stations. So we'll go to WTNH.com, which is channel 8. So I'm usually, I appear on NBC Connecticut here quite a bit. So whenever there's a tech story, they often have me dial in with some commentary. So they're saying on, see, I'm like right in this dividing line between the 24. So I might be on the higher end of the spectrum. So we could be looking at like 2 feet here. And it's hard to say, like nobody really knows how this is gonna go. So one station says about a foot. These guys are saying probably 2 feet. Let's see what the CBS affiliate says. And they are saying, see, he's already got his sweater on. So whenever the weather guy takes his suit off, you know they're in it for the long haul here. So let's see what he says here. But you can see, I mean, this isn't bad. I mean, it's a pretty good little device. And, you know, if you go with the Raspberry Pi 400, it's like your old Commodore 64. You plug it in and you're off and running. Or you can put it together yourself with the case. The case does get a little bit warm, but I think that's by design. It spreads the heat out. So let's see. So they're saying 8 to 18 inches. See, it's all over the place, right? So we have 2 feet, 8 to 18 inches. And the one I haven't looked at yet is Fox 61. So let's look at Fox 61 here in Connecticut. And they use DuckDuckGo as their default search engine. So here they're saying 10 to 20 inches. So it's either 10 inches to 2 feet. We'll find out. And then you get these wind gusts and stuff. So we'll have to see where it all plays out. We had a pretty good blizzard back in, I think 2013 was the last big one that we got. All right, so we got some more comments here. I missed a bunch of them. Let's take a look here. Travis got the studio version of DaVinci to do all the higher end stuff and the GPU acceleration. Yeah, there's definitely some things to look at there. Gamerfly says, nice ZX81 in the background. And we called that here in the United States the Timex Sinclair 1000. And that was my very first computer back there. And that's my exact one that my dad got me when I was a kid. XYZ Dimension wants to ask a question. Sure, ask away. And Boston, yeah, it looks like Boston's going to get hit pretty hard because they're right on the other end of it. And as David points out, as we heard a little bit earlier, that North and Central Florida are going to be in the freezing zone. Oof. Brutal. J-Slow has a Toshiba laptop from years ago. I've got an old laptop. We'll take that one out one of these days too, an old Micron that still works. I actually updated it recently with compact flash. So it's got a solid state drive now, which is pretty cool. Tech Time with Eric, thank you for the super chat. Have I considered looking at any of the TCL phones? You know, I have one to review. So yes, I will be looking at one shortly because I do have one that I've been meaning to get to. And Darth Vader appears right on schedule. His name was mentioned. And Tech Time is down in Jersey. He's looking at getting about 17 inches of snow there. My goodness. So this is a tough question for me to answer because I don't know if I've looked at the VivoBook 15. And I'm not sure which one you're looking at. Here's what I found. For the most part, you know, computer to computer, they tend to perform close to one another, you know, with the same configuration. And so it comes down to build quality and the kinds of things that you're looking for in a computer. OLED displays look nice, and if you're playing games, it'll certainly look better on an OLED than it would on a LED display. But without knowing exactly what the specs are, it'd be hard to say which one is better than the other. But if one has a GPU and the other doesn't, obviously that's going to make a big difference. Arca wants to know, did I miss the setup? Yes. Yeah, we got it all in here. So I think you can rewind on the stream on the Amazon. If not, after it's done, you can go back and watch. It was actually really easy. It just pops in. There's a little, actually I may have some B-roll already. Let me take a look and see if I can find it real quick. The setup was super easy. So this is what it looks like. It just kind of pops in like that. And then there is a thermal pad that you want to put on it. Then you screw it together. So the setup was like really easy. The other thing is that that part touches the thermal pad that you stick on top of the processor. So it spreads the heat out across the entire case. It is a passively cooled case, but that's an important note. So I had that little thermal pad on there, and then you just kind of layer it in there. Or just, you know, you put the kind of angle it so those ports go in first, and that's it. So it is probably the easiest case that I've that I've worked with in a while, because it is all of like 2 minutes to get it going, and then you just screw down that bottom plastic piece, and that secures it all in place. So super, super, super simple. J-Slow wants to know, how much is the Pi? The problem with the Pi right now is you can't find them anywhere. The base model, I believe, is like $35, because I think they always have a $35 version. These questions, by the way, are coming from Amazon. So what I recommend at the moment, just because you can get these, is that if you look down in the on the Amazon chat here, they have something called the Raspberry Pi 400. And I'm a broken record for those of you on the YouTube thing, but I just want to make sure people see the difference here. And actually, if you're looking for a Pi, this is one that you can get right now. This is the same guts as this, except it has a keyboard. The kit that I've linked to has a mouse and a book and a power supply and I think the SD card. So everything you need to get started is in the box. Whereas with this thing, you got to buy the case, you got to buy the Pi, you got to get all this stuff. This is I think 4 gigs of RAM on this one too, so it's pretty well equipped. I feel like I'm like the home shopping club here, but I do think this is a really good value right now, just because you can't find the Pis anywhere. They're sold out because of all these equipment shortages. So that's the one right now that I would get, just because you can get it and you don't pay ridiculous prices for it. Oh, that's right. We got the falling iguanas in Florida too, right? Because they all like fall out of the sky or out of the trees when it gets cold. I got to talk to my dad's down there in Florida now. I'll have to ask him if he's got any iguanas coming out of the ceiling there. I have not seen the Raspberry Pi 4 clusters, but I would imagine those are kind of fun, right? And Tech Time with Eric, what do they call it? The white gold, right? If you got a plow truck and 14 clients, that's right. It's the white gold. Yeah, my friend's a landscaper, so he does my plowing for me too. So to help out XYZ Dimension here, here's the thing. Like, you can really get into decision paralysis. I will say this, and and I'm going to say this based on the fact that I've used more of these than other brands. However, I've found that the Lenovo Legion gaming laptops are really good. They're not very big. The one that I reviewed recently-ish was their Legion Slim 7, I think it was called. What a great laptop. Really compact but powerful. So I like those. I have a Legion Y740 from a couple of years ago, and that one's been really good. So I've been every one of the Lenovo's I've looked at, I've been really happy with. I think they're very well constructed. And the Legion 5s are pretty reasonable. And David says, I wonder if Roomba's working on a robotic automatic snowblower. That'd be kind of fun. Although I can imagine that being a little dangerous, because I think those snowblowers can like take your arm off if you're not careful, right? I'll have to see. Ed is, yes, I'm feeling better. Actually, I feel fine. It's just this is not from the COVID. This is from a cold that I caught a week after I got better from the COVID. So I'm just still like lightly congested. So hopefully in the next week or two, I'll get fully better. Part of it is we're just locked up in the house all the time. But according to my Amazon air quality thing, there's no particulate matter in my home. So I'm not sure what's going on. I think it's just the dryness that is killing me. So XYZ, I would head over to Lenovo's website and see what they've got for their Legion laptops. Because they've got a bunch of stuff that is often on sale. The sales come and go, so you have to kind of keep an eye out. But I've been very happy with mine. I've had mine, I bought it, so it wasn't a freebie, I paid for it. So I bought mine about 3 years ago, and it's compact, it's very good performance, great screen. I think I know somebody that just put in a heated driveway. I'll have to confirm with her that she got it. We can talk about that next time. And yes, Tech Time with Eric got the Alienware, right? So I had an Alienware 15 laptop that was big and clunky. So I sold it. Eric bought it there, and I went with the Lenovo to get something smaller and more portable. And I also used that Lenovo. So that Lenovo is a gaming laptop, but for me, primarily, it's a production machine because it can run the vMix software that I use for all my production. And my desktop that I run this stuff off of is more powerful, but for most of what I do, that laptop is more than adequate. It's pretty crazy. So Charles G is wondering if I ever messed around with Odroid. I migrated my Home Assistant install from Pi 3 to the Odroid hardware. I have not played with that. What I am looking at is the new standard, was that Thread? The Thread standard? Because I'm eager to see how, because Apple's already turned it on, so I'm eager to see how all that integrates. So I'll have to cover that once something is available. And I'm also curious to see how that will integrate with my, my Wise stuff. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with the Raspberry Pi and its performance. And then of course you have your terminal, so you can do all your terminal stuff. And what we can do here, everybody? I'm gonna load up a little Nano, because Chris Allegretta made Nano. He was the guy that started it. And I started using this text editor back when it was called Pico, because my very first, and that's the other fun thing with the Raspberry Pi, is that you can set it up so, here, let me do a couple of things here. So back in the early 90s, when I first got on the internet, everything that you did on the internet was through a terminal screen. And so this was the first web browser that I used. It was not very intuitive, but it was called Lynx, and it gives you a text interface for accessing the World Wide Web. Now, back in '94, the World Wide Web was a lot simpler than it is today, so you could get a lot done. Another thing here, let me quit out of here. And actually the bigger thing early on, because of this text interface, was something called Gopher. And I did a video a while back, because I do these retro videos from time to time. I did a video on how it was like to browse the internet when I first got going. So for example, Gopher was kind of the first thing that I used on the internet beyond FTP and Telnet to navigate around. So there are still Gopher servers running today. Let's find one here. I don't know what kind of trouble we're going to get into with this, but let's see. Yeah, so what you would do is just kind of navigate through like a menu and then click on the things that you wanted to look into. So here's like Gopher server. And if I want to learn about Unix, I can select Unix here. We're not going to do some of the other things on the list. And you could download stuff. You can, this was how a lot of people navigated the internet. This is pre-web. And the web kind of came out of this, right? This was a text-based, menu-driven thing. We went from this to hypertext and images. So it's kind of fun to like install some of these old apps because they're all still maintained, and you can get in there. I used another one. Now they changed it to something called Alpine, but this was the Mail app that I used initially. So I'll show you what it looked like at least. And so Alpine actually looks a lot like, or Pine was what it was called back in the day. It actually looks a lot like Nano. And this was the email application that I used to use back in the 90s. And so what I did in this video is I basically installed all the applications that I used back in the 90s to use the internet on the terminal that I logged into. And what's funny is all this stuff is still here. Like it's all maintained and it still works. So if I wanted to write an email to somebody, that's how you would do it. I had another one. Let's go out of this thing here. How do we get out of this? No. How do we get out of this thing here? Now I'm stuck. Hang on a second. Oh, Control-C, cancel. Okay, cancel, yes. Cancel message. Answering confirm. Well, yes. Okay, there we go. So what you would do is basically just jump into the command line when you logged in. So when I would dial up my internet provider, I would be dropped into a Unix prompt, and I would have to navigate around. This is probably not going to work. Is it called Top? No, it was called Tin. Oops. And Tin is a Usenet client, and that was kind of like the equivalent of a bulletin board. So I would need an open Usenet server to connect to. Actually, we could probably connect to the GRC one. Let's see. Newsgrc.com. Let's see if that'll work. But it's a lot easier to install software now than it was back then, I'll tell you that much. Because now you have these packages that automatically install the dependencies and everything. Back then you had to like build it from, you had to compile the code. It was just a nightmare. Michael wants to know, how is Gig Pro? It is working great because they just upped my speed. Now I'm at 3 gigabits per second now, which is awesome. I mean, honestly, if I had residential fiber, I would have jumped at that. But and David Bound says, one could use a Pi with, yeah, you could use it to control your heated driveway. It could certainly do that. And Tin for Usenet, yep, that's what we got going on there. I don't have a server to connect to. But let's see if it works. Oops, it just crashed on me. Let's see. Yeah, I think I have to get it. I have to configure it. I did configure it for that video I did a while ago. I wonder if I can just point it at a server without having to go into its configuration screen here. Let's see. Okay, so let's do tin.r. Let's still connect to localhost. I would like to be able to specify a news server from the page here. Find a server, G. Okay, so use a server. Let's try that. There we go. So, oh, did he close down his news groups? There we go. Hit Y here. Oops. There we go. Okay, so now we can see it. So now, this is what it looked like. So what you could do, now this is Steve Gibson's news server who does security now. And so what you would do, most ISPs had a Usenet server that you could connect to. And then they would be bringing in messages from the Usenet, which was one of the many networks, and still is, that works on the internet. Now, he has his own news server. But for example, I can go to GRC News, and you can see all the different messages here. If I want to look at one of these, you could, it was kind of like a bulletin board system, all text. But it was a standard. And so there was different clients available. So eventually, so I first got on the internet in '94 on a free server that I found. And you can see this all in the video that I did. So I got in like in the spring of '94. And by the spring of '95, my ISP transitioned from this text terminal-based thing to point-to-point protocol, PPP. And so you would dial into the server, but then you could run applications on your Mac or Windows computer and have those applications connect to the internet. So eventually there was clients for Windows that were GUI and not terminal-based, and you could have all these different applications running alongside each other at the same time. So I used Eudora for mail on my Mac. I used Fetch for FTP. I had a Usenet client. I can't remember what it was. There was all these different pieces of software that you could run, side by side on these machines. So it's neat. But it was fun to like, as a project, just to configure a Raspberry Pi to run internet applications like I used to back in the early '90s. So that was kind of a fun thing. Daldon wants to know, can you use Plex on the Pi? You could run a Plex server on the Pi, but it doesn't support hardware transcoding. So it will not be useful like a NAS would with an Intel processor. Travis Rhodes found out that half of his neighborhood has AT&T fiber for 2 years. Literally, houses down the road, they stopped. That's a very common story, unfortunately. Yeah, and William, there's a great amount of resources on YouTube to learn how to use it. So I would look around, some basics, getting started, that sort of thing. But I think you'll like DaVinci. It looks, you can't beat the price. So, all right. So I used, in Connecticut, there was a company called Paradigm Communications. There was a few ISPs that popped up early on. And so they were the ones that I was using. They were called PCNet. So I used them for the terminal, and they switched to the PPP. And the funny thing was, I was in college, and we did not have a network yet to the dorms when I was in college. So it wasn't until my senior year that we got a dedicated connection. So I was using PCNet all the way through school because my school didn't have a decent connectivity option. They did allow you, so we had a couple of options. We had a VAX server, which was a big mini computer that was in the computer center at the school. So most students got a VAX account to get an email address. and my original email address was like this long. It was super, super long. And then there was if you knew where to go, there was a Unix server called Morpheus. I think it was on like a Sun workstation or something. So the computer's name was Morpheus, and you could go down there and apply for an account on the Morpheus server, and that would give you a true Unix-based experience, which was much better than the VAX experience for the internet. So I had a Unix account there, but there was no point-to-point protocol option. They eventually came up at our school. They had like one of these terminal connections that you could shoehorn into being a PPP connection, but it was super slow and unreliable. So I stuck with that until we got the campus network. But they limited your hours, so it wasn't unlimited. There was a few services that launched that were unlimited, and that's what began this notion of unlimited internet, because the dial-up providers back then eventually became unlimited hours. But I think I was limited to like 100 or 200 hours a month. But really, you got what you needed from the internet. So if I wanted to check my email, I would connect, download all my email, and then disconnect. So because I could work on the email offline, it would queue up, and then when you reconnected, it would send your messages out. So that's how I used it. And Chris is reminiscing about the VAX. Ours ran VMS, which was a fine OS, but the system, yeah, a lot of times the system admin was kind of the gatekeeper, right? If you were not on the system admin's good side. But it was funny though. So my senior year, because I knew I was a computer nerd, and hardware guy. So when the campus network got installed, I think the campus IT services they didn't add any staff, but they added the entire residential campus to their user base. So they gave me a special designation as someone so they pointed people to me and a few other people to connect their Ethernet cards. And what was funny was that they didn't care, so I would charge a flat rate. I think this is back in 97, 98. So I think I charged like $70, and that included the Ethernet card. I bought a case of Kingston ISA Ethernet cards. And so I would come to your room, I would install the Ethernet and get you on the campus network if you wanted to do it. A lot of people didn't get on it because they didn't see any value to it. And the crazy thing back then was that Windows, this was Windows 95, horrifically insecure in that most of these computers were just like wide open. So people would connect, they would get access to the drives, like total craziness. Like it's amazing how insecure it was, and we had no idea. But yeah, we had a T1 line at the school. So when I started, I got to campus early that year when they first turned it on. So I had it all to myself for like the first week. And I remember downloading, I forgot what it was. I think I was downloading MPEG-2 video clips because I could, right? There was, like trailers for movies and stuff. And I think I was like blown away that it was doing 100K per second download. And compare that to, at the time, if you were on a 56 modem, the most you would get was 5K. I mean, that's like, in a perfect world, you get a 5K download. So this was like 5 to 100, huge difference. Now I'm downloading, let's see, on my connection, I'm pulling about 300 megabytes a second, if I'm not mistaken. Let me look and see what that is. I think it's 300 megabytes. Yeah, 375 megabytes a second on my 3 gig connection. That's in a perfect world. I never get that because the server I'm connecting to never can deliver the speed at that rate. So David went to UConn. They had a 3270 mainframe system. Yeah, those were powerful machines, weren't they? And yeah, I think a lot of universities were using VaxMail to communicate. And it was funny, so my roommate, so another thing we had on the VAX system was you could pull up a list of everyone who was logged in, and you could chat with everybody. Actually, you could do that on Unix here too. So let's see, do I have the finger? Finger's not installed on here. But we had this on the Unix side. You could type in finger, and it would show you everybody that was logged into your system. I'll install it real quick and just show you what it looked like. So that was on the Unix side. On VAX, they had a screen you could pull up that would show you everybody logged in also. And the VAX screen was a little easier to look at. It was a little more graphical. It would show you who was on a direct connection, who was dialed in. So here on this, here, I'll clear the screen here so you can see what it looks like. Now, granted, I'm the only user in right now, but it'll show you. It would show you who was logged into the system and what they were logging in via. On the VAX, same kind of concept, but it was in a more laid out screen. I still remember what it looked like in my head. And my roommate, his last name was Lutz, L-U-T-Z. So what you had to do is you would leave that screen and then type in like chat and the username. So because my roommate's last name was Lutz, like all these people would randomly chat with him whenever he was logged in, because it was a very easy name to remember. It was just 4 letters. So I think he met his girlfriend on it, on the VAX system, believe it or not, because he had a very easy to remember name. So those were kind of the fun things there. And Brian was laughing about Gopher. Yeah, I installed Gopher on here. Here it is. Gopher's still up. Gopherproject.org. You are entering the Gopher space. So it still exists. People are hanging on to this stuff, just like FidoNet and the old BBSs. Yes, that's what it was. It was phone. Right, so you would type in phone and the name of the user and it would connect to them. On Unix, we had talk. And talk would work, was it talk? No. Chat? Maybe I don't have it installed. What was it called? See, this was like installed by default on most of these systems. It looks like this one. Let me see if it's on my Mac here. Yeah, talk. So we had this thing called talk. Yeah, so this is what it looked like. And this would work across the internet. So I remember I was logged into my ISP. Oh, by the way, another thing was my ISP was a long distance call. And I had friends who had 2 phone lines who ran a BBS in the next town over from me where it was a local call. So I used to dial into their BBS. And then they had this little door thing you could go into, and then it would dial out to the ISP, so I could avoid the toll phone charges. But in any event, you could finger a system remotely, and it would show you who was logged in. And so in the summer leading up to me going to college, I was chatting with people on the Morpheus server, the Unix server at my school, and that's when I learned there wasn't a campus-wide network. I was like horrified. But yeah, I think it was the one I remember using was Talk, but I guess there's YTalk also. I wonder if that maybe is the default on here. Yeah, YTalk's not on there either. But it was a basic chat app, but it worked pretty well. Then of course you had IRC, which was around back then. So yeah, kind of fun. But yeah, I did a whole video on browsing the internet in the 90s, and the project that I did was taking the Raspberry Pi and turning it into kind of the equivalent of what I used to dial into, which was a lot of fun. So good stuff. All right, well, I got some editing to do, so let me go and do that. And yeah, I just wanted to get this case set up here. And it's a nice case. It definitely gets warm, but that's, I think, by design. So super simple to work with that. All right, so I hope you all have a great afternoon, and maybe tomorrow in the blizzard, I will log back in. Maybe we'll do the retro thing tomorrow if I get caught up. So yeah, we'll go from there. All right, everybody, have a great afternoon. And if you're curious, let me find the link to that video. I'll put it up in there so you can see it. Give me a second, let me look it up. '90s internet, here we go. Yeah, this was done back in April of 2018. And you can see exactly. And this one took a while for me to figure it all out. There was actually a lot of work in getting this one put together. So if you click on that YouTube video, that was how I accessed the internet in the 90s. This was a lot of fun, really fun. A lot of these videos I do just for like a fun project, knowing that they're not going to do very well, but that one was a good one. So yeah, so that's going to do it for now. But thank you all for tuning in. And shalom aleichem to you. I'm the Brown. Yep, we are approaching sundown, and I should probably take a rest, right? But I got some more work to do. So before that happens, I will get some editing done, get Saturday's video ready for you all. And yeah, that'll do it for now. So I'll be back again before you know it. Catch you all on the flip side. Bye-bye.